What's next for the Boston Celtics? Well, I think it's safe to say that the team we saw a year ago in 2024 and even this year isn't going to be the same at all in 2026. But first, let's go back to the 2024 season when the Celtics won their first ring since 2008. On paper, this team was unbelievable. Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Jrue Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis and Derek White as a starting five. It really doesn't get much better than that, and a lot of people expected them to steamroll everyone in the regular season. And guess what? They did just that. They finished first in the Eastern Conference with a 64-18 record, with a league-leading net rating of 11.6, 4.2 points better than OKC, who was second in that category. Overall, the Celtics were dominating in the regular season. They continued their streak in the playoffs, going 16-3 and winning the title against the Dallas Mavericks. But what made them unstoppable was the amount of threes they took and the percentage at which they were making them. They attempted 42.5 threes a game and made 16.5 of them, so they were shooting a very impressive 38.8% as a team. Also, despite the fact that they were second in 3-point percentage behind OKC, who shot 38.9% from 3, they made 3.2 more threes than them, and the team who was second in made threes per game, the Dallas Mavericks, made them at a rate of 36.9%. I'm mentioning this because not only were they making threes at an incredible rate, they were hitting them way more than every other team, and in there lies the reason why they were so good in 2024. They are why everyone started shooting so many threes this season, and unfortunately for them, their shooting percentage from beyond the arc fell to 36.8%, which is still very respectable, but some argue that they shot themselves out of games. Live by the three, die by the three. There was a lot of hope that they were going to go back to back this year, but after winning the first round in 5 against the Magic, they got beaten in 6 games by the Knicks. In that series, they continued to take an unholy amount of threes, 46.1 per game to be precise, and only shot 35% as a team. However, this went a bit under the radar because the main talking points in the first 2 games was the incredible Knicks comeback wins, and in Game 4, Tatum went down with a torn Achilles. And that brings me to next season. With Tatum out likely for the entirety of the season, and the questions surrounding Kristaps Porzingis and Jrue Holiday, the Celtics have some tough decisions to make, which we're going to talk about. First, let's talk about Kristaps Porzingis. After playing poorly in the playoffs, although, to be fair, he was recovering from an illness, he averaged 12 points and 4.5 rebounds against the Magic in the first round. Then, things went from bad to worse against the Knicks. He shot an abysmal 22% from 3, scored 4.1 points and was benched for most of the series. Now, like I said, the Celtics told the media his health wasn't at 100%, and you could see something felt off about him because he is a very good player. However, with the state and the direction of the team, it seems very likely that Boston will trade him. And any trade involving him requires the other team to send out at least $23 million in salary per league rules. Let's explore the trade options for Kristaps Porzingis. Here's a deal that I drew up that would send KP to the Nets in exchange for Cam Johnson and Derek Whitehead. Why would the Celtics do it? Well, we've already established that Boston will probably not be a contender next season because of Tatum's injury, so they'll want to clear cap space, and in return for KP, they would get an excellent 3-point shooter in Cam Johnson and a young player with potential who can also hit threes at a high rate. The Nets would probably accept this trade because they already have a boatload of young players and they are currently rebuilding. So actually you might think, well, hold on a minute, why would they take on a guy with 1 year left on his deal? Now, the answer to that is they'll be able to re-sign him next season and potentially pair him with another free agent. Additionally, they might ask for 1 or 2 second round picks from Boston because the Nets could just go the other way and instead rebuild through the draft. So I'd say if the deal gets done, the Nets will be able to get more from this trade purely because they know Boston wants to get rid of that expensive contract. And that leads me to the second trade scenario, this time from Bleacher Report. They propose to send KP to Orlando in exchange for Wendell Carter Jr. and Mo Wagner. In terms of fit, I could totally see these two play well in Boston, especially Wendell Carter because he's a stretch big, similar to Al Horford. On the other hand, Orlando needs another star next to Paolo because Franz Wagner, who's a great player, can be inconsistent at times, and having a guy like Porzingis who would stretch the floor and who's won a championship would be highly beneficial to the Magic. However, the teams would have to find a way to match salaries because they are both apron teams, meaning there are more restrictions when it comes to trades. Moving on to Drew Holiday. He's the other player who might be traded because he's 34 years old and still has 3 years left on his deal, and he'll be making $104.4 million in total. So the only teams who would be interested in acquiring him, in my opinion, are desperate teams or teams who want to get over the hump. Those include the Clippers and the Kings. So let's go over some possible trade scenarios. First, a deal that would send Holiday to the Clippers for Bogdan Bogdanovic and Derrick Jones Jr. Once again, the Celtics will most likely be looking to get 3-point shooters, and Bogdanovic is lethal from deep. They would also get a very good role player in Derrick Jones Jr., who averaged 10 points last season. He's very good at cutting at the basket and can finish at the rim through contact. The Clippers would probably agree to this deal because their championship window is closing as Kawhi and Harden are getting older. This deal would allow them to bring in a very good perimeter defender and another NBA champion who knows what it takes to win a title. Lastly, the Celtics could trade Drew Holiday and 2 second-round picks to the Kings in exchange for Keegan Murray, Jonas Valanciunas and Devin Carter. That way, Boston would clear some cap space and get a good role player in Keegan Murray and a good centre in Valanciunas. Murray can defend and shoot, he's young and his contract is cheap, although Boston would have to extend him because he only has 1 more year on his deal. The Kings would probably go ahead and accept because their owner is desperate to make a playoff run, and if he sees the opportunity to get Drew Holiday, I don't think the Kings would pass up on him. Overall, Boston will have some tough decisions to make this offseason, and this summer is going to be very interesting, so stay tuned.